You think intelligence looks like a screen. You think it looks like a phone in your hand, a search bar, a map app, a calendar, a calculator, a little glowing rectangle that answers almost any question before your brain has time to sweat. But the real answer is far stranger. Because if you were dropped into the world your ancestors lived in, without your devices, without your roads, without your refrigerator, and without anyone coming to rescue you, your modern brain might not look advanced at all. It might look helpless. Your ancestors did not know algebra. They did not know about satellites. They did not know what a virus was, or what electricity was, or why the moon pulled the sea. But they knew things you would struggle to notice. They could read a broken twig like a sentence. They could hear a bird alarm call and know something had moved in the grass. They could smell rain before it arrived, remember landscapes without maps, track animals across stone, and make tools from materials most people today would walk past without seeing. So what if intelligence is not just what you can explain? What if intelligence is also what you can survive? For most of human history, your ancestors lived in a world that did not forgive confusion. A bad guess was not embarrassing. It was dangerous. If you misread the weather, you got wet, cold, and weak. If you misread an animal, you became food. If you misread a person, you might lose your place in the group that kept you alive. There was no reset button. There was no customer support. There was only attention. And attention was the first kind of genius. Anthropologist Richard Lee spent years studying the uneasy people of the Kalahari, one of the most famous hunter-gatherer groups ever documented. What he found was not a simple life or a primitive life, but a life packed with decisions. Where do you go today? Which plant is edible? Which track is fresh? Which person is angry? Which story carries a warning? Every day asked questions that had no written answer. Could you answer them? Your ancestors lived inside a giant, moving puzzle. The puzzle changed with the season. It changed with the wind. It changed with the mood of the group and the behavior of animals and the hidden ripeness of plants underground. To survive, your brain had to notice patterns before they became obvious. That is why prehistoric intelligence often looked less like memorizing facts and more like sensing relationships. This footprint belongs to that animal. That animal moves toward that water. That water is near those trees. Those trees attract insects. Those insects attract birds. Those birds make that sound when a predator is near. One clue led to another. One detail opened a whole map. And this is where your ancestors start to look very different from the cartoon version of ancient humans as grunting, confused, almost stupid creatures dragging clubs through the dirt. That image is wrong. It is not just a little wrong. It is backwards. In the 1960s, archaeologist Louis Binford helped push a new way of thinking about ancient people. Instead of treating stone tools as random scraps from simple minds, he argued that archaeology should look for behavior, planning, and systems inside the evidence. A stone flake was not just a stone flake. It was a decision. It showed where someone found the material, how they shaped it, what they used it for, and sometimes how far they carried it before leaving it behind. A tool is a frozen thought, and your ancestors left millions of them. Imagine holding a hand axe made by a human hundreds of thousands of years ago. It fits the palm. It has symmetry. It has edges shaped with repeated, controlled strikes. To make it, you need to imagine the shape before it exists, hit the stone at the right angle, adjust when it breaks differently than expected, and keep a final purpose in mind through many small steps. That is not random smashing. That is mental time travel. You are looking at a mind reaching into the future. Cognitive archaeologist Thomas Wynne studied ancient stone tools and argued that many of them required advanced spatial thinking, planning, and working memory. Working memory is the ability to hold information in your mind while using it, like remembering a shape while your hands are still creating it. Your ancestors had to do this without instructions. No diagrams, no tutorial, just observation, practice, failure, and the quiet pressure of hunger. How many modern people could make one useful cutting tool from a raw stone on the first day? Probably not many. But the tool is only the beginning, because the deeper intelligence was not just in making things. It was in knowing when not to. A modern person often thinks more means smarter. More objects, more choices, more information. But in a harsh environment, too much can become a trap. Carry too much and you slow down. Collect the wrong thing and you waste energy. Stay too long and the food disappears. Move too soon and you leave resources behind. Your ancestors had to calculate the invisible cost of every action. This kind of thinking is called optimal foraging theory. It sounds technical, but the idea is simple. An animal, including a human, has to get enough energy from food while spending as little energy and risk as possible. Should you dig for roots? Should you chase an animal? Should you walk farther? Should you wait? Your ancestors were running this equation with their bodies long before anyone wrote equations on paper. And they were not doing it alone. That may be the most important part. Your ancestors were not smarter than you because each individual was secretly a lone genius. They were smarter than you in the way groups can be smarter than individuals. They stored intelligence in relationships. They stored it in rituals. They stored it in songs, jokes, scars, tools, cooking methods, warnings, taboos, and stories told around fire. Before libraries, your group was the library. Before search engines, memory lived in people. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar proposed that the size of the human neocortex, the outer part of the brain involved in complex thought, is linked to the size of our social groups. His famous social brain hypothesis suggests that one one major challenge of being human was not just finding food, but tracking people. Who trusts you? Who owes you? Who is jealous? Who is generous? Who lies? Who protects children? Who panics under pressure? This is not gossip in the shallow sense. This is survival math. A person who can read people has access to food, mates, alliances, warnings, and help during danger. A person who cannot read people becomes isolated. And isolation, for most of history, was a death sentence. So your ancestors practiced social intelligence every day. They watched faces. They listened for tone. They remembered promises. They noticed who looked away at the wrong moment. They understood that a group is not just a crowd of bodies, but a living web of tension, trust, fear, and obligation. You still have this brain. You use it when a message feels colder than usual. You use it when a room goes quiet after someone speaks. You use it when you know a person is upset before they say anything. But your ancestors used it without the cushion of modern life. For them, a social mistake could mean losing protection in winter. Could you survive that level of emotional reading? Then there was memory. Not the kind of memory that wins trivia games. The older kind. Landscape memory, route memory, season memory, body memory. Your ancestors needed to know where water remained during dry months, where berries ripened after certain rains, where animals crossed a ridge, where danger lived, and where stone could be found for tools. A modern map shows space as lines and symbols. Your ancestors carried maps inside experience. They remembered by walking. They remembered by telling. They remembered by connecting places to events, animals, weather, and ancestors. Psychologist Eleanor Maguire famously studied London taxi drivers and found that their hippocampus, a brain region deeply involved in navigation and memory, showed differences linked to years of memorizing the city's streets. The brain can change with the demands placed on it. Now imagine the demands placed on your ancestors. No street signs, no GPS, no written address, just terrain, just the memory of where your life could continue. Their brains were trained by necessity. Yours is often protected from it. This does not mean you are stupid. It means your environment trains different skills. A modern world rewards reading screens, managing symbols, moving through institutions, and understanding systems too large to see directly. Your ancestors could not do many of those things, but they could do other things with a sharpness that modern life rarely asks from you. They could tell time by light. They could identify useful plants by smell and shape. They could notice illness in an animal. They could predict where a herd might go. They could keep children alive without hospitals, recipes, flocks, or written instructions. And perhaps most impressively, they could learn from each other with incredible precision. This is called cultural transmission. It means knowledge passes from one person to another, not through genes, but through teaching, imitation, correction, and shared attention. A child watches an adult crack a nut. The adult slows down. The child tries. The nut breaks badly. The adult adjusts the hand. A tiny improvement is passed forward. Then another. Then another. Across generations, small lessons stack into deep knowledge. This is why human culture becomes powerful. One brain learns. Many brains preserve. Future brains begin where past brains ended. Evolutionary psychologist Michael Tomasello has argued that humans are unusually good at shared intention, meaning you can understand not just what another person does, but what they are trying to do with you. Pointing, showing, teaching, correcting, cooperating toward an invisible goal. These abilities seem ordinary because you grew up with them, but they are extraordinary. They are why a group can hunt an animal no single person could defeat. They are why a child can inherit thousands of years of skill without discovering everything alone. They are why your ancestors did not need smartphones to be intelligent. They had minds connected to minds. But here's the twist. The more modern life gives you, the easier it becomes to forget what intelligence originally was for. You can order food without knowing where it came from. You can travel without understanding the land between places. You can speak to hundreds of people without reading a single face. You can know facts about the world while barely touching the world. This creates a strange illusion. You feel more informed, but are you more aware? Your ancestors had less information, but they often had more contact. Contact with hunger, contact with weather, contact with tools, contact with animals, contact with death, contact with each other. Their knowledge was not floating above life. It was pressed into the body. That is why many ancient skills look almost magical from the outside. A tracker kneels and sees a story in the dust. A gatherer sees dinner where you see weeds. A hunter hears silence and knows something is wrong. A grandmother knows which fever might pass and which one will not. A child knows how far they can wander before the group becomes afraid. These are not instincts in the simple sense. They are trained perceptions. They are the result of years spent paying close attention because attention mattered. And that may be the biggest difference between you and your ancestors. You live in an age of distraction. They lived in an age of consequence. Your attention is constantly pulled by things designed to capture it. Their attention was pulled by things that could kill them, feed them, warm them, guide them, or teach them. Your brain still has the same ancient hunger for meaning, but now it often feeds on fragments. A flash, a notification, a headline, a face, a number, a little reward, then another, then another. Your ancestors also looked for signals, but their signals were embedded in reality. A track meant an animal. A cloud meant weather. A smell meant rot or ripeness. A facial expression meant conflict or comfort. Their attention completed a loop with the world. Yours often completes a loop with a machine. What does that do to intelligence? It may make you faster in some ways, but it can make you thinner in others. Not less less capable, less rooted. The ancient mind was not perfect. Your ancestors were wrong about many things. They feared spirits where you might see disease. They explained thunder with stories. They made mistakes, followed false patterns, and sometimes trusted dangerous beliefs. But even those stories had functions. They organized memory. They warned children. They marked sacred places. They helped groups act together. A story does not need to be scientifically correct to shape behavior. And in a world without writing, behavior was the archive. The modern mistake is thinking that because ancient people lacked modern explanations, they lacked intelligence. But intelligence is not the same as modern knowledge. Knowledge is what a culture has already stored. Intelligence is the ability to use what is available. Your ancestors used stone, bone, fire, memory, voice, gesture, trust, and attention. You use glass, code, electricity, institutions, and written language. Both are human, but one is easier to underestimate because it did not leave behind books. It left behind bones, tools, hearths, footprints, pigments, graves, and marks on cave walls. And those marks matter. When ancient humans painted animals, carved patterns, buried their dead, and carried pigments across landscapes, they were doing more than decorating. They were symbolizing. A symbol is one thing standing for another. A mark becomes an animal. A grave becomes love or memory. A color becomes identity. A pattern becomes meaning shared by more than one mind. Archaeologist Ian Tattersall has written about symbolic thought as one of the most important features of Homo sapiens. Once humans could turn the world into symbols, they could think beyond the immediate moment. They could imagine. They could plan. They could remember the dead. They could picture what was not present. That ability now becomes mathematics, art, religion, law, money, maps, flags, brands, and stories. But it began with a mind noticing that reality could hold hidden meaning. This is why your ancestors were smarter than the stereotype. Not because they knew everything, because they built intelligence from almost nothing. They turned stone into tools. They turned fire into safety. They turned sound into language. They turned memory into culture. They turned groups into thinking systems. And they turned a dangerous planet into a place where children could survive long enough to become you. That is the part you rarely feel. Every comfortable modern moment is standing on ancient intelligence. The light switch, the cooked meal, the shared joke, the map, the song, the rule that says strangers should not harm you, the habit of teaching a child slowly instead of leaving them to fail. These things did not appear all at once. They were assembled by minds under pressure, generation after generation, mistake after mistake, discovery after discovery. Your ancestors were not waiting for civilization to make them human. They were human enough to create civilization. So the next time you look at a prehistoric tool or a cave painting or a simple fire pit, do not see a primitive object. See a solution. See a nervous system reaching outward. See hunger becoming planning, fear becoming story, attention becoming knowledge, and knowledge becoming inheritance. And then look at your own life. How often do you confuse convenience with intelligence? How often do you confuse information with understanding? How often do you let a device remember what your own mind used to hold? This is not a call to reject the modern world. You are a modern human. Your intelligence belongs here too. But there is something ancient in you that still wakes up when you walk in a forest, read a face correctly, make something with your hands, sit by fire, tell a story, or notice a change in the air before anyone else does. That part is not outdated. It is older than history, and it is still working. You think intelligence looks like a screen, but maybe intelligence first looked like a footprint in the dust, a hand around a stone, a child watching closely, and an ancestor who knew exactly what to do next.